Just want to think about this elephant of overpopulation for a few minutes and just pick up on something I mentioned in a previous video, which is to do with, what kind of social conditions would you have to put in place to lower the population by limiting live births, which is perfectly valid, but as an ambition. And of course I'm taking it for granted that lowering the human population on the planet is a good thing. I know some people think it isn't a good thing or it's unnecessary to do that, but I'm assuming that we do, and I'm also assuming that we'd have to lower it quite substantially, not just take a few off the top. They would have to bring it right down. Again, we can argue about what that final figure would be, but I'm working to a figure of 5 million, which is tiny, but there's a discussion to be had about what that number would be. But let's assume that's the goal, and also the goal is to do it relatively quickly, so you can't just institute social measures, you can't just rely on education and better distribution of wealth to bring the conditions in all nations up to a point where they naturally have lower birth rates, which I know happens, but that's going to take a long time to sort that out. Probably more time than we've got realistically, I think. So you'd have to do something more interesting and creative. So lowering the birth rate by fiat, by force if necessary, is one solution to that. A few problems with it. First off, it has been tried, of course. It was tried in China. I think there was financial penalties that were instituted for couples who had more than one child, actually. And I guess it kind of worked to the extent that birth rate was reduced, but you needed a police state apparatus to do it. You had to be China to do it, really. And most of us, and myself included, would not like to live in the kind of state which would be necessary in order to enforce that kind of a legislation. It would be a state in which people routinely report one another for violations which are part of something that a state doesn't usually put its hand in, to do with sexuality, reproduction, relationships. So you would be in a situation in which the state routinely is involving itself in that, and which neighbours, friends, relatives are routinely reporting one another for its violation. Not sure if I'd like that. You'd also have a problem with what you do with violations. As I say, I think in China it was financial, but that sets up a big problem right there, because all you're doing there effectively is charging for extra childbirths. So what you get there, and again, unless you're willing to put into place a kind of Maoist communist state in which the distribution of wealth was again forcibly controlled, you would have to you'd just be effectively putting a price on childbirth. So only the rich could afford to have more than one children, which you might say is interesting and perhaps even valid. Some people might say. Personally, I don't think that. But yeah, that would be another piece of fallout from that. So it would tend to promulgate only certain families, certain individuals, at the expense of others, and the people are least able to pay fines, the people least enabled in terms of looking after themselves would be the people who would be most penalised and most criminalised as a result of that. So again, I think that would be a bad idea. Also, of course, it would have to be somehow instituted worldwide. Otherwise, all you would get is population wars. I mean, certainly in Britain and Europe, there's kind of inflammatory statements often bandied around, particularly in the far right, about how certain sectors of the society, particularly Muslim populations, are rising at the cost of lowering or more stable non-Muslim populations. It's sometimes phrased in terms of black and white as well, but it's that kind of I've certainly read as a kind of population wars that were being outbred, is how it's kind of phrased. You know what I mean? And that kind of an agenda undoubtedly would rise. I think. I think even if we managed to institute some kind of a police state in Britain or in the States or in parts of Europe, where there were, sure enough, there was compulsory sterilisation and where there was limited childbirth, and people somehow managed to go along with this without a revolution, we'd still be casting envious eyes across the waters to various other countries who weren't doing that. And you know, and there would be reproductive tourism, you know, in the way that there was sexual tourism to the Far East, and there was cosmetic surgery tourism to Eastern Europe. There'd be reproductive tourism. You get people going across to North Africa to have children, and you know, it would be insane. It would be insane. So all kinds of social unrest, I think, would have come out of it as a result of that. What else? It would have to be a fascist state, as I say. And I know some people have suggested that's absolutely fine, or they're willing to pay that kind of a price just to get the population down. It's not a price I'd be willing to pay. It's a means ends decision, as I think I said before, and the ends don't justify the means for me. Yeah, that'll do for now.